Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joseph Ryder Anderson podcast. It has been a very busy week for the TCG world. There's been a lot of really cool things releasing this week. We've had mega evolutions for Pokemon coming out. We've had the new starter deck for the Gundam card game, and we've had two great new sets for Union Arena. But of course, today we're going to be talking about the Union Arena sets that have come out, Rurouni Kenshin and Hunter and specifically Rurouni Kenshin, 'cause that's a big one. That's the one I've personally invested in. I spent a little too much money on Rurouni Kenshin, but I was able to build pretty much all the decks with just 6 boxes and two starter decks. So that has been a ton of fun to get my hands on these decks and test them out, and has definitely given me a lot of insights into how these decks are going to impact the Union Arena meta. But let's go ahead before we dive into all of that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the news that's come out for Union Arena. So specifically, if you were tuning into the Bandai Card Fest, which got a lot of negative publicity because I guess it was not the greatest card fest ever. But apart from that, and by the way, for anyone who wasn't familiar with that, I guess it was like way overcrowded, way more people showed up than had ever showed up to a card fest before. And it got so bad that they were like shutting things down. People have been issuing apologies from Bandai. So like I think the Bandai Card Fest Twitter posted something like they're going to try to do better kind of thing. The Union Arena producer apologized. So it was definitely kind of a crazy event down in Dallas. But one cool thing was we did get some really exciting stuff coming out for Union Arena during kind of like prime time on the Saturday. I think it was 5 p.m. CDT. They did a panel on with the Union Arena producer and Cosmic. They did a panel on Union Arena, and they revealed 3 titles that have not been revealed before. That's Chainsaw Man, Sakamoto Days, and Inuyasha. And I think the one that people seem most excited from in my circles are Chainsaw Man. And those are coming out presumably post-April. We have the schedule here. Again, this is on my website. If you haven't seen it, you can find this whole release schedule on the website. And those are the ones that are coming out next. But we also got an inside look into the championship prizes. So these are the prizes that you can get for the finals. So I think it's like top 16 from the regionals get to go and compete in the finals, and then you can earn these prizes. And these playmats, it's funny, they're not the greatest looking playmats. They look a little bit Photoshop, but actually, yeah, they really caught my eye because I would love to have this SAO playmat. I think that'd be super cool. This Kenshin one's pretty cool too. But there's a lot of interesting prizes that were revealed. I don't think that we'd seen these before, these prizes that you can get at finals. So that's definitely exciting. But really, what we're here to talk about are the new decks that are coming out, the new sets, the new decks that are coming out. So, so starting out, let's go ahead and work our way down, top down. It's kind of a funny way of doing this, but I want to start with the best deck. I don't know if that it's really going to surprise people all that much. And that's the red Kenshin deck. So this deck is really, really strong. And it's kind of can be a little bit hard to understand exactly why it's so strong. So let's go ahead and dive in and kind of break this deck down and what makes it so great. So I think the key thing with this deck is that it's just kind of not really something we've seen before. And it's not, I don't want to give the impression that this deck is just so overwhelmingly powerful that it's just going to beat every deck. There's definitely a really strong matchup factor to this deck. But the key thing to keep in mind about Red Kenshin, and this is based on the lore. So in the show, Kenshin like chooses to use, I forget what it's called, but he chooses basically to use like a dull blade. I think like the back side of his blade is sharp and not the front side. And he does that because he has an oath not to kill, right? Kind of like what your final says. So the whole thing about Kenshin is every single Kenshin character who's really strong otherwise, when he battles a character and wins, the losing character goes to the energy line instead of being sidelined. So that's kind of a drawback in some scenarios, but also not really a drawback in others. So if you're using this against like a high energy green deck, like the big guy that's at large right now, which is the Lancelot, in my opinion, pre-Kenshin, Lancelot definitely was the strongest deck by a mile. It just can do so much so reliably and is so strong. But a deck like Kenshin can really handle that well, especially if you're pushing like those air cavalries and Lancelot's back to the energy line and disrupting your opponent's energy line and pushing out, forcing them to remove their two energy gen characters. This can be really strong in that kind of a matchup and has no trouble dealing with those stronger bodies. But against more aggressive, lower energy decks, pushing a character to the energy line isn't always going to be a big deal for them, right? Like a lot of times, if you're playing like a four cost max deck, you're gonna it's you may even be welcome that because you can push up a little bit more aggressively and not have to worry about your energy line. So there's definitely some matchup stuff going on, but I think to me, really what is strongest about this deck is actually its draw. So and its strongest draw card is actually this Kaoru. I think that's how you say her name, Kaoru. And she is really something that we've not seen before in Union Arena. And she really stands out to me when I've been testing this deck. And I managed to get her on the field. Like she is basically a guaranteed draw, extra free draw every turn. There's just not very many cards that do that, right? I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is that the Royal Palace is sort of like that, right? Because you have so many squad zero in that deck that you can essentially draw a card reliably every time you use it. Karu is like that, and it just provides a lot of consistency to this deck that it otherwise wouldn't have. Most of the time, this effect only works though for you to draw a card if you have if she switched to resting. She can also switch herself to active the turn she's played via her when played. But if you haven't sidelined a character, and most of the time you're not sidelining characters. So, and even one interesting thing is that your special also is not sidelining opposing characters, is sending them to the bottom of your deck. So you can even use your special, and it still doesn't get in the way of being able to activate your Kaoru's draw effect. So, I think she's what makes this deck extra strong. I think if you didn't have her, this deck would be a lot less elite than it is. As it is with what it has, I think this deck is definitely S tier. I would say it's up there in contention for best deck. Um, and I think if people play this a lot, Lancelot, which is currently the best deck, it won the regional in Dallas. It's just the most reliable and most powerful deck. But I think this is going to switch the format away from the more control heavy meta that we saw in the Dallas regional. Instead, we're going to see a faster meta, one that can deal with this kind of a deck a little bit more effectively. So just watch out for this deck. It's really fun to play. It's really cool. A couple of other cards that stand out. So this guy, if you don't know already, this guy can basically shut off your effects on the other Kenshins that stop them from sidelining characters. You can use this guy he's really good himself because he lets you draw a couple cards. And then he also can shut off the effects that stop your Kenshins from sidelining characters. So he's a really strong card in this deck. And then you also have this guy, this 3-cost Kenshin I think is insane. Comes in, you can play him. You can if you discard a card from your hand when you play him, you can switch him to active. Active. He's only a 3-cost, and you can do that. Has nullify impact. He's one of your strongest cards. He also has the color trigger, so he's a must, 4 of must in your deck. And then you also have this really handy Kaoru, 2-cost Kaoru that generates 2 energy if you have Kenshin on the front line, but also can provide a protective layer to your Kenshin characters. So she's just really strong. Another really valuable add. I think people are already talking about the 0-cost Kenshin with the 3000 BP. And he's a great blocker. He's not so great offensively because early on, your opponent, they know what they're doing, will just put up a chump blocker, take the hit. That card will get bounced to the energy line, and it won't really do much. But it is a great way to it's defensive and offensive, right? Because you can essentially ensure that you're going to swing over anything your opponent has with 3000 BP on a 0-cost character. But I guess they block. So again, it is more defensive. Sorry, going back to what I said before. It is more defensive because if they have somebody on the field and you have this during your turn, they're just going to block and go back to energy line. So yeah, it is more of a defensive play than an offensive one. But looking at your raids, let's take a look at these guys. This Kenshin raid, pretty strong. I kind of go back and forth about which one I prefer. This one's good because you can move a character to the energy line, which is really good into certain matchups, less good into others. But it also is really good just to poke holes in your opponent's defenses. To make it easier to swing in. And you have so much aggressive plays, being able to play this guy set to active, and then being able to do a double attack which a lot of red decks have double attack. So I think this is sort of like a baby double attack where you do have to discard a card in order to enable the double attack. But because you draw a card when he's played, that's not usually a huge deal. And you do also have a lot of draw in this deck. So this deck is really fast, really strong, but I will say the caveat is it is a bit matchup dependent how good it is. Because if it's going into a Lancelot, it's really good. If it's going into um, like a four cost or lower, more typical four cost or lower deck, it's just it's not like crazy good. It's just solid, right? So it's not like it's you're going to instantly win your matches against every deck. It just has some really interesting plays into the more control heavy decks. So I think it's really cool. Definitely such a cool deck, and you can build this relatively easily. I have this as a guide on the site for an upgrade guide to the Kenshin starter deck, and the Kenshin starter deck really is, to me, the best starter deck to date. So I would definitely pick up two or three or four of those. You can pick up four if you want to get every single one of the cards that you need, because it comes with those cards that you can only get from the starter deck for your other decks. So pick up four of those if you want, but definitely the strongest starter deck, and you can relatively easily upgrade it. It comes with your two of your strongest cards, this one and this one, the Karu and the Raid Kenshin, and then you just got to pick up the only ones that are going to be hard are the SR Karu and the SR Kenshin. You can pick up those relatively easily, especially if you buy them as singles. So I think this deck is just going to go a long ways. This deck is probably going to be, dare I say, the best deck in the format post Kenshin, which we are basically post Kenshin because today is the Kenshin release day. So I would say this is probably going to be the best deck in format. And I don't think people are going to be playing Lancelot as much, which is kind of nice. I think people will still play Lancelot. Lancelot still goes great. Lancelot can beat this, but I think people are going to shy away from Lancelot with something this fast and powerful running around, which is kind of nice because Lancelot is so strong that it could almost dominate the meta if it were allowed to. So next up, we do have the blue Seijiro Hiko deck, which is actually kind of the deck that I resonated with the most. Let's see if I have this in the builder. I've changed this a little bit since writing this article. I've done additional testing, but this one's really cool, actually. I really like this one. I think the only thing is it's just, going up against the likes of a red Kenshin, which is faster. It could be a little tough. It also, I think when I've played it, I'm kind of like, well, it's really strong, but like it's a high cost deck, and is it stronger than Lancelot, or should I just play Lancelot, right? So, but there are some really cool plays. I think my favorite play is using this Misao character. You can use this to combo so many interesting things. You can use this to power up your Kenshin, so your Kenshin reaches that double attack, and then it'll return to the hand. Then you play it, gain the energy, and then you can play this Hiko more easily. To use the Hiko to bring back a special, so you can, when he's played, you bring back an event card. So it's great because he has a damage 2 and can't be blocked by 2,000 or less. If your opponent doesn't have that many high BP characters, you can bring back a special when he's played. Use the special to remove the only high cost character that they have, assuming they only have one, and then they can't stop you from swinging in for two. So this is one of the stronger damage 2 characters we've seen because he can't be blocked by chump blockers. Makes him really strong. Yeah, and he also does gain BP, so he's swinging for 8,000 BP during your turn, and it's cutting through most of what you're going to be facing down. And then you can use him to grant BP to one of your other characters. That's going to be really handy when trying to power up your 5-cost Kenshin, who gains double attack at 6,000 BP. And he also has a handy when attacking effect that lets you draw a card. We've seen this similar effect for Ichigo and Blue Bleach, and that does come in handy, that kind of a when attacking draw effect. So I really like this deck. I think it's really strong. You have a lot of filtering. So you have the Kenshin, the 1-cost Kenshin filtering. You have the training that lets you search. You have this guy, the 3-cost Hiko, lets you filter. So there's a lot of filter in this deck. Similarly, there's also a lot of filtering in the red deck too. So in the red deck, you have this 1-cost that lets you filter, which is really strong. So definitely just a lot, very consistent decks here. And then we do have in third overall this Seto deck, which is really interesting. I think Seto has a lot of promise, and I think if I were to choose a deck for rare battle, this would probably be the one, because Saito, when he is sent to he gains a lot of benefits from attacking from the energy line. So if you're going up against red, which I think a lot of people probably will be playing red in the rare battle, you can bring him up. You can basically recycle his effect. So you can like take a hit with him, he goes back to the energy line, and then you can reuse his snipe at 5,000 BP and impact all over again, which is just so strong. You have to hit 6 energy, which is a little tough, but I'd probably switch this around now that I've tested it a bit more. I would probably switch this around so it's four of these guys, the two cost Kenshin. But yeah, you have a lot of search. You have some really strong Kenshins. You have your strongest, of course, is the six cost Saito. You do have this four cost Saito that has nullify impact and lets you search, but none of these cards are nearly as strong as the six cost Saito. And then you do have this really cool card, which any deck, I think I glossed over this with we'll go back to that in a second with the blue deck, but the Saito is so strong, partly because he can double as a zero cost character if you have no other characters on your field. He's a zero cost, so that helps add some consistency. I think in my updated blue deck, my current deck that I'm testing actually has there's another one of those in the blue deck that is similar in terms of it becomes a zero cost if you had other characters on the field. And I would definitely attempt to tech that into your blue Hiko deck. So definitely a strong contender. I think this was really a solid pick for rare battle. It's probably not quite as fancy Spanishly enough for the to like dominate the meta in this like the regular format, but overall pretty strong. And then here's this interesting deck. The Sanosuke is really interesting. Let's see if I have that in the builder. It's a really interesting deck. Kind of reminds me, I would say it reminds me a bit of the Gurren. This guy especially, this Sanosuke, this 2 AP cost Sanosuke must be blocked. So this character, so when played, this character gains your opponent must block this character's attacks if able until the end of the turn. So that is really interesting to me, and it reminds me quite a bit of the Gurren, but it doesn't have the impact. You do have to combo him with the single character of bad in order for him to gain impact. That's really the way to go. And then there's this guy, the damage to 5 cost, damage to raid, nullify impact, and then when this character attacks and is blocked, you may switch to resting one active Sanosuke on your front line. If you do, this character gains 1,000 BP and impact until the end of the turn. So really, really strong character. Um, your opponent will probably want to block him because he's a damage too. But if they do that and you're able to pull off this switch to resting, you will gain an impact. So it's sort of like again, kind of like a baby version of that Gurren. And then when played, draw cards. There's some cool stuff going on here. You do also have some pretty strong aggro to kind of tie it in with that red, with the red color, what the red color likes to do with this Yahiko. Draw a card. This character gains 1,000 BP till the end of the turn because of 4,000 BP character. And then when attacking, you may place one card from your hand into your sideline. If you do, choose up to one character on your field that has not attacked this turn and switch it to active. So you can basically play a card and then switch it to active using this effect. So definitely an interesting deck. Not top tier, but interesting enough. I think that people will probably want to try it out. This deck is really fun. The 10 Swords deck is a super fun deck. I think people are going to be really tempted to play this deck just because of how fun it is and the combos that you can get off. This deck is really all about putting cards strategically on top of your deck in order to unlock effects. Let's go in and take a look a little bit more at this deck. Um, I think another cool thing too is it kind of like the Red Kenshin, you get access to these characters with really high BP that you wouldn't typically have at that high of a BP at their energy cost. This was a 2 cost, 4,000 BP. It's insane, right? Has a draw trigger, so there's no drawback there. But when played, you do have to place a card from your hand to the top of your deck. However, in this deck, you want to be doing that. You want to be strategically putting cards top of your deck so you can unlock effects like this, for example, this 3 cost Makoto. If on the front line, place top card of your deck in your sideline. This character gains BP equal to 500 multiplied by the required energy value of the card placed into your side one line with this ability. So, and then gains impact at 5,000 BP or more. So you're not really like, it's not a huge drawback if you do your combos right to be putting cards on top of your deck. You have a card like this that lets you help you filter, look at the top card of your deck, then place it on top of your deck or into your sideline. That's really strong. And you can use that into your raid, for example. When this card is placed in your deck into your sideline by one of your abilities, you may have if you have the required energy for it, you may perform raid with it. So you get a free play into Sojiro here. And then you even have this really strong character. You may place one Makoto or Yumi or 10 Swords Affinity card from your hand to your sideline. If you do, place card set to active. So this comes in active at 4,000 BP, and you can place top card of your deck into your sideline and choose up to one character in your opponent's front line with BP equal to or less than 1,000 multiplied by the required energy value of the card you place into your sideline. So again, another benefit to knowing the card you put on top of your deck with the likes of a 2-cost Makoto. I also really like this Ironclad Rengoku. It gives you some protection to your Makoto, but beyond that, it also lets you draw a lot of cards. So you're gonna have to wait a turn, but the turn after you play this, you can sideline it and draw 2 cards. So it depends on whether or not how badly you need that 2 energy gen, but you can do that in a pickle to. If you're in a bind, you can do that to draw some cards. So I think it's a really fun deck. People are going to really like this one, especially people who really enjoy combo heavy decks. It's definitely the most combo heavy of all the Kenshin decks. That's really cool. And then the deck that I connected with probably the least was this blue Aoshi deck. I have all the pieces for this, and it just doesn't really like super excite me, the possibility of playing this. It does have this Misao character. This is the one I was talking about. I would include this in your Hiko deck as well. I have it in mind, just not on the website yet, but in my in-card deck I do. And this one is probably the strongest 0 cost the strongest one that can double as a 0 cost if you have no cards in your field, because it does let you do some filtering, looking at the top 3 cards and placing up to one of them into your sideline. So it helps you just find the cards you want more quickly and get rid of the cards you don't want. So this deck is one cool card. Let's go over to the builder again. One cool card in this deck that really caught my eye was the Takeda card. This Takeda is actually kind of interesting because it sort of follows the typical 2 AP removal card. And it's sort of like a twist on the likes, like we've seen this with like the 2 action point cost Kenpachi or Atomic Samurai, where it has something to do with the affinities on the field, but this one lets you sideline a 2,000 or less BP character just when played. But if you sideline one of your Oniwaban group, which is all of these guys basically, you can sideline a character with 4,000 BP or less. I think that's really strong. So you can get rid of a 4,000 BP body with this card, and it also provides 2 energy on the energy line, so it gives you some added utility. So there's a lot of reason to play this card. I think it's really strong. So. But yeah, this deck's all basically about bringing back your Aoshi characters to the field and using them to do other effects. And I think it's cool. It's just not really nearly as strong. It's kind of a far cry from the strength of the rest of these decks, which makes it less appealing to me overall. So let's go ahead and look briefly. We're gonna look a little bit less at Hunter x Hunter. I wasn't super impressed with Hunter x Hunter. I'd say Rurouni Kenshin is one of the better sets we've had. Volume 2. Hunter x Hunter Volume 2 just isn't super strong. It does, though, bring, I think I have this in the builder, it does bring a new, I guess it's English exclusive right now, Kurapika, which really changes Kurapika. So I think one takeaway from this Volume 2 that we will get is that Kurapika will be more A tier than it is now. I don't know that it's even really A tier right now. It probably won't still be S tier, but it's going to be a lot closer to that than it was before because of this 4-cost Kurapika. This Kurapika lets you generate energy from the front line. It also just helps fill out the space. You didn't really have a natural attacker so much into this deck, so now you have this 4-cost Kurapika, lets you generate energy on the front line, and then also lets you draw 1 card when attacking. So it gives you additional energy gen, and that's all going to just help making you hit your 7-cost big Kurapika a lot easier. So I think a lot of players who really enjoyed the days when Kurapika was king of the meta, if you remember those days back when it was like Kurapika and Purple Bleach and Kurapika had the edge, a lot of those players are going to be excited to dust off the Kurapika decks and power it up with this really significant add to the strategy. Beyond that, I really like the Razor deck. So I ranked that pretty highly in my rankings. We'll see how well this deck plays off. But I think this deck really brings a strategy into Hunter x Hunter that we haven't really seen, and that's one that's really removal focused. So this Razor, it's really a lot of really unique a lot of really unique strategies in the Razor deck. Um, and one of them is it has this card, and this is the first time we've seen this that I can think of, is it has this Nen Beast character that you can run 14 copies of this card, and it gains power, BP power for each card under it. That's a big thing in this deck, is putting your characters underneath other cards so that they gain big boost to unlock more powerful effects. And one of those is via this 5 cost Razor, who I really like. He has Nullify Impact, so he comes in rated with Nullify Impact. So he's kind of like, you can kind of think of him as like the 5 cost Ichigo, but he still is beneficial after he's on the field. Other than just being a 4,000 BP body, he can also nullify some impact. And you can choose up to one character in your opponent's front line with BP equal to or less than 1,000 multiplied by the combined total number of Ninbeast affinity cards and face down cards under characters on your front line and sideline it. So you're going to really be looking to stack up a lot of like face down cards, and you have plenty of Nen Beast characters to be on your front line to take advantage of that effect. So I think this is a really cool strategy, and just having that blatant removal is something that's really unique to Hunter x Hunter. I think would appeal to a lot of players. You have a lot of nullify impact thanks to Razor. So you have this guy too. If on the front line, you may sideline one Nen Beast. Again, if you sideline this guy, you can place him under and basically power up some of your other effects. But he has nullify impact, and then you get to draw a card, and he becomes a 4,500 BP attacker, which is super strong. And then you have this 2 action cost Razor that has a fantastic wind blocking effect that he boosts to. He's both offensive and defensive, which is always strong when you have those two things in a card. So defensively, he can block impact attackers by becoming a 6,000 BP blocker. If your opponent has impact, so that kind of is like a way of stopping those end of game finishes via impact. And then when played, you may sideline one Nen Beast. Again, you're going to want to sideline your Nen Beast so you can stack them under your other characters. And then you can choose one of your opponent's characters on the front line, switch it to resting, and it stays resting. So really strong utility. I really like this Razor deck. I think people are going to play this. This one might be one of the more popular, probably the most popular other than Karapika coming out of this set. But there is another yellow deck. And again, that's one thing I do have to hand to Hunter x Hunter. A lot of times when these other sets that do have stronger decks in them, like Hunter x Hunter is just Volume 2 doesn't make Hunter x Hunter the strongest set really. But other sets that do have more strong archetypes in them, their new energy colors aren't always the strongest. Whereas I think these yellow decks that come into Hunter x Hunter are actually quite strong. And the really cool thing in the Razor Attack Team deck, and why I rank it so highly, is that you can create a scenario with an impact sniper. If you combo this Gon with this Killua, then this Gon basically becomes a let's read this. So if on the front line and you have Killua and Hisoka on the same line, this character gains 2,000 BP. So he becomes a 6,000 BP character at 4 energy. That's crazy. If Killua Zildike is on the same line, this character gains 1,000 BP and impact. So let's just leave Hisoka out. If you have Killua on the same line, he becomes a 5,000 BP character with impact. And then if you combo him with the Killua, if on the front line switch to resting, choose one Gon on your field, it gains damage 1. At the end of the turn, this character was played this turn. The chosen character may gain snipes. This gives you flexibility. If you have like a direct hit opportunity, you can boost Gon to become a damage 2 character, or you can give him snipes, so he's removing and impacting at such low cost. That's really strong. I think this deck's gonna be really popular. There's some really cool things. I think the only thing that's not cool is that some of these cards have effects that you can also use this. This is cool. So if you rest that Killua raid, you can then swap him by using this Killua. So you'll activate this ability if Gon is on your front line. Choose one of your characters on the front line. On the other line for this character and swap it, and then this becomes a 4,000 BP character. So you can basically use this effect, this raid effect. He switches to resting, then swap him out with this guy from your energy line. He becomes a 4,000 BP attacker, which is really cool. I think the only thing I don't like about this deck, and again, maybe you might have to look at it a little more. Maybe you don't need to go as heavy into Hisoka as I am, because there's not a lot of Hisoka. This Hisoka is really good. The 3 cost is good. Anytime you have a 3 cost character with 4,000 BP, then that's good. But this guy's a little bit frustrating to play. He's a 6 cost. He does give you some protection to your characters, which is cool. He is a 4,500 BP character, but he is the only 6 cost. You do have this 5 energy cost special, so I guess that does make sense. And you do have a bunch of like solid. You have these three that are all solid. The Killua three cost, the Bisky that lets you draw quite a bit. She's like your strongest draw engine, and then this Hisoka that's a strong attacker. So it's not like you're like suffering by having to build up your energy, but it is a little awkward to have these really strong low cost combos and then have to sort of build up to your higher combos. I think that's the only thing that makes this deck less good. And those are the main decks I wanted to highlight. We do have this Gone and Friends, which is a significant step up from the Gone and Friends strategy that was there before with the starter deck. If you remember that, that one just never really took off. And they did give us a lot of like better, bigger, better reasons to play this deck. I like really like this Leorio. This character gains all abilities listed below. If you have the required number, so one or more of Gone, Killua, or Kurapika, this character generates energy even if it is on the front line. And three or more, this character gains 1,000 BP. So you can become a 4,000 BP attacker with that's generating energy. That's really solid. You have this guy that can switch to active. Uh, he has impact, can have impact. He can have 5,000 BP. That's really solid. So there's a lot of, it just definitely gets a lot stronger. Don't even know if you'd want to run the starter deck Gone. This guy's still pretty good. The starter deck Gone at 5 and having a boost to 5 energy, maybe you don't want to do that. But it's definitely a lot stronger. I think this is actually something that you could potentially win a tournament with, as opposed to the other Gone would be really tough to do that. So it's a huge step up for the Gone and Friends strategy. And that's really all I want to talk about. This deck, I'll go over the next ones, I guess, briefly, which is this one is actually pretty cool. I think it's just a little slow. So this is the Zoldyck family. We do get this three cost Killa, which is really good. There's a lot of really interesting plays here around like choosing characters. And if they get sidelined, you get benefits. This five cost Silva would be really strong if he came in active. There are some interesting plays here, but I think this deck is definitely a step down in terms of power, as are the rest of these. You do have, for people who like the specified slots, we did get a ton of new support for specified slots, but it still is a bit of a risky strategy. Despite how many strong cards are in here, it's not really going to be a reliable meta deck. And the Phantom Troop, similar, not quite as strong, although it does get some added support. So go ahead and take a look at this if you like this strategy. There is some added support with this Crollo. It becomes a deck that I think people are pairing this a lot, kind of like a Zoldyck Phantom Troop mix, whereas you can definitely just play the Zoldyck on its own, but still just kind of probably have trouble competing with a lot of the decks out there. And then the deck that was probably the weakest from my review when I was looking into it is the Bomber deck. The Bomber deck was kind of had a time where it was okay. I think it even got higher finishing in one of the earlier Union Arena tournaments that was bigger online. But this deck just really looks a lot weaker than it did when HunterxHunter originally came out. Back then, being able to take out a 4K through some combos wasn't so bad. If you kind of combo this Bara with Genthru, you can basically take out 4Ks. But these days, having to like combo things, take out 4Ks isn't the greatest. You really want to be just being able to remove those 4Ks if you're a removal deck much more easily. And there's just not a really broad range of strong attackers that you can mix into that strategy. So definitely it's interesting having HunterxHunter come out at the same time as Kenshin. I don't know that I've kind of experienced such a disparity in power between two sets, because Kenshin has like potentially the best deck in the format in it, and other decks are just really strong and really strong mechanics in them. And then HunterxHunter is a set that probably doesn't have any top deck in it, really. I think you could make an argument for the only deck that you can make an argument for is the upgraded Kurapika, but that's still probably going to just be second tier even after this set releases. So I hope that gives you a good understanding of where the Union Arena meta is at, where it's headed. Again, we're probably going into a faster meta than what we experienced before. I think if you look at the top 32 from Bandai Card Fest, it's a relatively control heavy meta. So I'm over here looking at this now. We had Lancelot in first, no surprise there. Lancelot, in my opinion, really is just a lot stronger than any other deck right now. I've been testing the heck out of Lancelot. And it's just so strong, so reliable. It's like all the things that prevented it from dominating the meta were fixed with essentially a single card. This is Nunnally, and playing the Nunnally via Cornelia is one of the most satisfying plays in all of Union Arena because it just helps you get sped up so much faster. I was talking to some friends about this, but I think what really changed between once we got this Nunnally, what really changed in this deck was that it went from it used to be more of a 6 cost Lancelot deck. And if you look at the way people built it, it was really built around the 6 cost Lancelot. But really now it's more of an air cavalry deck. You can easily get two of these air cavalries off in a single turn and just decimate your opponent. And it's not that hard to do anymore. So it just made this deck so much stronger. But yeah, a much more control heavy format. We have decks like One Punch Man that have a ton of trouble against aggro decks. So you're gonna probably not be seeing a lot of One Punch Man once Red Kenshin comes out. That's gonna be one change. Red Kenshin's gonna be huge. Red Kenshin should do really well into Code Geass. I don't know that it's gonna do so great into Roy. I think Roy has some plays against it. I think actually Green Bleach has some plays against it. I think it should do really well into Toto, so we might see a little less Toto. If people want to disrupt green energy decks, sorry, green high end energy decks, people are right now are kind of running Toto to do that, but I think Kenshin's a better option to do that. You'll probably see more Nanami, less of the Sukuna, the tall Sukuna. I don't really see. Well, actually, Red Kenshin could do really well into One Punch Man, right? Because One Punch Man just stops you from removing him. It doesn't stop you from like pushing him back. So I think that could be a really good matchup for Kenshin. So definitely we're gonna see a pretty big change to the meta from Kenshin. I don't think Purple Bleach is gonna go anywhere. I don't think Purple Bleach is particularly disadvantaged against Kenshin. So, but yeah, it's gonna just become a faster meta. I think we'll probably see some other decks we're not even thinking of that fare a little better in a meta that's less dominated by a Lancelot, and more dominated by a faster red deck. So, with all that being said, if you liked that content, again, check out the website, josephryderanderson.com. That's where all of my latest and greatest Union Arena content is. You can catch the podcast, you can catch the articles, tier lists, all that stuff is on there. And again, I appreciate you joining me for my latest video. Like and subscribe if you're watching and listening on YouTube, everywhere else. Leave reviews, all that good stuff. Until next time, keep on battling.